Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. It is the 220-1002 A+ Study Group pre-show. Just getting a few things ready to go here. Change the camera over there. That looks good. We've got 10 minutes to go before we get started. It'll be top of the hour. Thanks for joining us. Hi, chat room. Let's see. We've got the study group content going here. Don't need that anymore. This looks good. We're recording down here. We're recording up here. How much time do I have left on this recording? We have 40 hours we could still record. We will not be going 40 hours today. That's just how much drive space I have on that device. What else do I need to get going here? I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we've got everything we need. Hello, all. Welcome. Caledonia, Mississippi is checking in. We've got Raleigh, North Carolina. Atlanta's here. So we've got some folks checking in. Greenville, North Carolina. Welcome. There's Virginia Beach, Maryland. A lot of East Coasters checking in. First thing, we are here, ready to go. West Coast just getting up. Djibouti, Africa, Houston, Puerto Rico, welcome. Columbus, Georgia, Arizona. There's some folks out west. Welcome. Rochester, New York, welcome. Alaska, super out west. West Texas, that is out west. I count that as out west. Cherryville, North Carolina. Hey, Canada. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know you checked in. Always good to know. South Africa is here, so now we go far east. We're going east from here. Not the far east, I guess, but east of where I am. I just want to kind of pick the middle of the day for me so I can kind of catch people as they're getting up on the west coast of the United States. And then on Europe, this at least western side of Africa, get some folks there checking in as well. So thanks for being here, everybody. There's the UK, someone from Centerpoint Boulevard. Welcome. Right there behind the McDonald's. We've got Dallas is here. Morocco, welcome. Oregon, welcome. Missouri, Indiana. It's all good. And some folks checking in from Mars, which is not unusual, interestingly enough. That's kind of a common study group location at times. At times. Not always, but at times. Today we're doing all 220-1002, by the way, on a Friday. Normally we don't do these on a Friday. So if you're here watching live on a Friday, this is something I don't tend to do very often because I just don't like to do it on Friday. I don't know why. I'm here. It's not like I wouldn't be doing this. So we can always talk about that too. Arsenio asks in the chat room, will CompTIA be doing remote testing? They tell us they will. We'll see. They've not really said anything else. They said they're going to do it in April. Well, it's the 3rd of April. Technically, they have another 4 weeks left that they could roll this out. I would not rely on it, however. And in fact, I don't think it's a great way to test. I think it's a great way to test if you have no other choice. But for many of us that are wanting to take our exams, I think most of us would be better off waiting to go into a testing center. Just wait till they open up and go back. I think much better. Now, some of us don't have that luxury. We're far away from a testing center. We're in a time crunch. We need it. Yeah, you need to test for a job as soon as possible, of course. As soon as they have it available, you should absolutely go and do that. So that's important. Am I confined to home stay? Our headquarters here, as you see it, is in Florida, and Florida has been mandated by the governor to not go anywhere that you don't have to go. So we are sort of confined to home stay, yes. But I'm usually here doing things anyway. This studio is at my house, so I'm usually here. I work from home all the time. So that's one of those things. So I wouldn't say confined because I did go to the grocery store yesterday and got the week's worth of groceries, so I don't have to go back. There's our 5-minute warning. 5 minutes until the 220-1002 study group starts up. Got some new 2002 content on the website. I'll tell you, well, sort of new. New to many of us on the website. I'll talk more about that probably in the after show. We'll do that. If you're wondering where all these links are to the questions, I'll be providing that in just a moment. You can get a heads up on it. by looking through the links that are on professormesser.com/live, which is just another link. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also stay right there on the YouTube. And there's my marketing manager, Lori, who is texting me. Put this here. Put this right there. Get this here. That's there. I think we're in good shape. Maybe I could charge this while we're sitting here. Wouldn't that be a great idea? All we would need is a cable. Look, there's one. Is there a Network Plus practice test in the works? Well, it's in the plans. I would not say it's in the works. The next practice exam book I'm working on is for this, the 220-1002. That will be the next one I release, I believe. That will be the next one. And then after that, I'm thinking that would be a perfect time for Network Plus as well. Now, how did this video get up and running again? Close that video out. Pause it. I think we're in good shape, though. So that's my plan for practice exams. People really like the practice exams, so I want to make more of them. So I'm hoping to have some of those available. In the meantime, I'm putting some Network Plus questions on the website. There will be a pop quiz question. I just mentioned my marketing manager, Lori, is currently putting them in. She's inputting them. She's doing the data entry. So I hope to have those out over the next week. So give us something to do. Certainly by the next study group, which should be next week, which should be super, super good. Super good. It'd be very good. We've got questions now online for the 1001, 1002s, Core 1, Core 2. Will there be tests for CompTIA Security Plus? There already is. There is already a practice exam book that has been released for the Security Plus. It's on the website. So that part's good. I don't have to write that one. It's already been written. It takes months to write these books. I don't think people realize if you've never written a book before and published it, these textbooks take 6 months to a year for some of these textbooks you're reading to get written, proofed, edited, published, made available to you. It takes a long time. Mine take months because I don't have to deal with any third parties. I'm my own publisher. I'm my own editor. I'm my own proofreader. For better or worse, I am my own. It works out okay, though. I spend a lot of time, especially on this 1001 book. We spend a lot of time proofing and making sure things would be good. There's some minor things that I think I'll have to update for another version, but it's just some tiny little minor things that I have found, some spacing of things I need to move around, and but nothing that is incorrect, nothing that's invalid. There's nothing worse than seeing a practice exam question and it's just wrong. It's just a wrong question. Like the question's not right, the answers aren't right. So I spent a lot of time making sure that they would be right. So, but when I find them, the good part is because I am self-publishing, I simply edit, fix that, and then post it. And then you have everything you need. To get to the answer the questions today, you go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer those questions. That's the Socrative student link. We're about a minute away from getting started, and you won't have to look at the back of my head anymore, at least not for the first hour. Let's make sure our cameras are good. They seem to be. I think we've got everything where we need them. Recordings are going. See my Cylons going down here, so they're looking good. We've got recordings going up here as well. It's my OBS software that's actually doing the streaming up there. That's why you sort of see a picture of me in this one. For that, we can get the laptop to cooperate. I guess at this point we could probably get the keynote running. I need a green light on here. There it is. Green light. Perfect. So now we've got that running. I think we're in pretty darn good shape to get all of these things happening. I just don't have a second counter. But we're about ready to go. We'll do some questions in the first hour, then I'll have you ask me questions in the second hour. So that'll be something we do today. Hold on, everybody. Let's do a study group. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2020 Professor Messer A+ study group. This one for the 220-1002, or what they call the Core 2 A+ exam. This is commonly the second exam that you would take in the series, although technically You could take the 1002 first and then take the 1001. You can take them in any order you want, regardless of how you're taking them. Today will be all questions and answers from the 220-1002 exam. And we'll go through plenty of questions in this first hour. I can't wait to get started with these. If you'd like to participate today, one way that you can do that is to visit us on our QA link. Simply go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can have a look at the QA. There'll be a question waiting for you right there. You'll know when you get there. If you would like to use an app to do this, just go to your favorite app store. Go to Professor Messer. Well, the App Store is going to ask for an app. The name of the app is the Socrative Student app. The name of the room, once you get inside of that app, is Professor Messer. Make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER. If you do all of those things right, you'll see a question that technically is a question we asked last month. That's why we call it our rewind question. And that question asks, which of the following would best describe the capture of all data sent to a device without the knowledge of the device owner? And there are a number of options available. One option is spoofing. Is it man in the middle? Is it social engineering? Is it denial of service? Or is it zero-day attack? So see if you know the answers. Which of the following would best describe the capture of all data sent to a device without the knowledge of the device owner? Is it spoofing, man in the middle, social engineering, denial of service, or zero-day attack? If you think you know the answer, here's our number one rule. Do not put the answer in the chat room. Do not put hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer right there. It's a great way to do it. Now, if we'll come back to the answer in just a moment. Let me first remind you that we're able to do these study groups every month. We've got a monthly study group for 1001, 1002, for Network Plus, for Security Plus. We have plenty of things to go that we talk about throughout the month. And you can always visit our website to find out where the next event is going to be. There's a calendar link right at the top of the page. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube. You can follow us by going to professormesser.com/YouTube and subscribing right there. We also have A+ questions every weekday on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. There are also questions on professormesser.com/Instagram. I should probably put that link up there. That's a new one. So you not only get the question of the day, you get a pretty picture to go along with it. And it's an Instagram carousel. That's what they call it. So you can slide to the left and you can see what the answer is right there in Instagram. If you are someone who's followed us through the years, you know that we can't do this without your support. So if you're someone who purchases things on Amazon, you might want to consider visiting our website first. Go to professormesser.com/Amazon and use that link to go to Amazon. You'll pay the exact same price you always pay when you go to Amazon, but they give us a bit of a commission, which helps keep the lights on here as well. And of course, we're doing a lot of purchases online these days. So always remember that link, professormesser.com/Amazon. I mentioned today we're going to be talking about questions from the 220-1002, one of the two A+ exams that you need to pass to be able to earn your certification. You have to get a 700 on this exam on a scale from 100 to 900. It's a little odd. Make sure all the study materials that you are using are written specifically for the 220-1002. Do not use older materials. Over 20% of the content on this exam is brand new. So pretty important that you have that. If you've been studying the old version and you're wondering what has changed, I made a list of all of those changes out on professormesser.com/objectives, which will also give you a link to get the objectives from CompTIA. So a couple of things you can get from that particular link. We're going to talk about the 220-1002 today. So our questions will be based on operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. I'll also remind you that all of my videos, A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, everything I do is available for you to watch for free online. You don't have to register. There's no paywall. Nothing's hidden behind a link. You just go to YouTube and watch it. It's that simple. Or come to my website. I've got an index there and you can watch it. Plenty to see there. There's also a downloadable version you can purchase of audio, video, and my course notes. You can find out about that at professormesser.com/download A+. And I'll also remind you that this study group is available in a podcast form. You can download that podcast at professormesser.com/podcast. And if you go to our website or go to the YouTube link, about a day afterwards, we have timestamps available. So you can go back to any of our study groups and click the timestamp and go directly to the question, answer, or the call that you may have heard before you need to find again. It's a great way to move around the study group very, very quickly. Let's go back to that question that we looked at before, which was, which of the following would best describe the capture of all data sent to a device without the knowledge of the device owner? And if you had a look at this, I think a number of you remember this one, where it is man in the middle. 77% chose man in the middle. So you're absolutely correct. That's exactly what that answer was. That is one of the best ways for a bad guy to get into the middle of a conversation and then have the two people in the conversation have no idea that anything there was happening. So feel free to have a look at what those are, and maybe useful to know about man in the middle. I give an example of man in the middle in my videos. I demonstrate man in the middle to have those things there. So it's a great way to not only capture information between two devices, sometimes the man in the middle can modify the information that is sent between station A and station B, which can be a really bad issue. Whenever you get into that situation, that can be a big problem. The way that I demonstrate it is art poisoning on my website. So it's an interesting technique. I demonstrate that in my video 2.5 for the 220-1002. The name of the video, aptly named Man in the Middle. And if you answered man in the middle, you're absolutely right. Would not be spoofing. Spoofing is a way to change the way you appear to be. So I can put on a mustache and say I'm my father. So that is not the situation we're in here. Situation here is we're in the middle of the conversation listening to what is going on. Really didn't fool anybody else with the others. It's not a zero-day attack. It's not something we don't know about and suddenly appeared. It's not 2% of you that said social engineering. Nobody's doing any social engineering here. In fact, you don't even know that anybody is there doing anything, which is even worse. Denial of service. It's not denial of service. Everything's working fine. Nobody's denying any services there. So man in the middle, really the best, really the only answer in this list. Have a look at those. That might help you too as you go through this. I think whenever I start breaking out and trying to figure out what the next steps are, this is a great way to do it. So that's our question from last month. What I'd like to do now is look at questions that are brand new. I write all brand new questions for the study group, but the question that I have for you next is not a multiple choice question. Multiple choice questions are questions very similar to the ones we just looked at, where you have a question and there are a number of answers to choose from. But on your exam, the first handful of questions you get will not be multiple choice questions. They'll be what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. So these might be fill in the blank. They might be a matching question. You may have to put them in a certain order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. They might be a drag and drop question. You never know what exactly this might be, but it's not going to be multiple choice. So the very first question of every study group, I like to give you a performance-based question. So the performance-based question I have for you today is a matching question, and the matching question is one that asks this question, and it's effectively a fill in the blank if you're filling this out and wanting to answer online at professormesser.com/QA. So here is the performance-based question of the day, which asks, match the function to the Windows utility. Some of these utilities will not have a match. You'll notice that I have 4 different functions, and then I have 7 different Windows utilities. This, by the way, is a technique that you'll sometimes see on the exam where it's matching, but it's not a one-to-one. Some things are left over after you're finished, and this is one of those situations. So you'll choose from one of 4 of these on the right-hand side. So for those of you listening on the podcast, I'll spell out what all of these happen to be. So the different functions are update antivirus signatures every hour. Another function is manage network communication for distributed apps. Another function is to install a keyboard driver. And another one is to restart a print spooler. Those are 4 very common things you may find yourself doing. And the different Windows utilities are Device Manager, Services, ODBC Data Sources, Event Viewer, Local Security Policy, Task Scheduler, and Component Services. So if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You always want to answer at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please, no hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're sitting here taking this exam right now, ready to go. Let's go through those descriptions again. One is to update antivirus signatures every hour. Another is to manage network communication for distributed apps. Another one is to install a keyboard driver. And the last one is to restart a print spooler. And again, those Windows utilities are Device Manager, Services, ODBC Data Sources, Event Viewer, Local Security Policy, Task Scheduler, Component Services. Maybe as I was describing some of those, it was one that you already knew what utility you would use for that. So if you've done these things before, you would automatically jump to some of those answers. So hopefully this is one you can remember as well, things you can work through. And be able to lock in your answers. Yeah, I'll take them in any format online. If you think they're already in the right format, you can simply send A1, B2, C3, and D4. So that would be a good way to put them in. I think we can all figure it out from there on what this happens to be. You don't have to type out every single one of these. That's why I put the A there. That's why I put the numbers there. Letters and numbers so we can match them up very easily. This is effectively a fill in the blank online. You're just matching them up and filling in the blank of the match. So it's kind of a combo question. On your exam, you'd probably get boxes that you could draw lines between or that you could put in a particular order to match them up properly, which is what we will do as well. Now, if you're familiar with Windows and you've used some of these utilities, some of these might jump out at you. So let's see how you did with this one. Not a lot of people jumped into this one to figure out those details. So let's see how we did. We'll start with the very first one, which is update antivirus signatures every hour. And if you're someone who needs to automate a function inside of Windows, you need to find some way to, schedule a task, you'll be using Task Scheduler. So if you chose the sixth option there, Task Scheduler, that matches up very nicely with updating antivirus signatures every hour. Sometimes the antivirus program has a way to do it. Sometimes you put it into Task Scheduler. Task Scheduler, great utility for really automating anything you need to do in Windows. The second on the list, this one's a little more difficult because it's not as common as the others are. This one was manage network communication for distributed apps. Distributed apps are using component services. We call COM services or DCOM for the distributed component services inside of Windows. That DCOM is something you would have to configure and set up. If you used Windows back in the day, there was, in early versions of Windows, a way to share data across the network using these APIs, these application programming interfaces. And it was great. We could pull information into a spreadsheet on our screen, and that information came from many, many different sources across the network. Now this has been formalized. It's now called component services, these COM services, and it's a great way to have these applications pull that data from many different sources, but to you, it just shows up on your screen. And if you ever need to configure some of those locations, you have to configure them inside of component services. The third thing on our list was install a keyboard driver. If you got a fancy keyboard, maybe a keyboard with extra settings inside of it, it may require a specialized driver. And in that particular case, you would use Device Manager, which is a centralized management for all of the hardware devices. If you ever need to install a driver, modify a driver, delete a driver, update a driver, they're all inside of Device Manager. And the last one on our list, restart a print spooler. Well, if we want to restart a print spooler, those spooler services are running inside of that services app. So you can go to the services app to restart the print spooler. So updating antivirus signatures every hour is Task Scheduler. Managing keyboard communication for distributed apps is Component Services. Installing a keyboard driver is Device Manager, and restarting a print spooler is the Services app. Now, if you're someone who's working with databases and need your applications to be able to link to third-party databases, regardless of what those database types are, one way that developers can create these apps is to decouple the back-end database from what the application is doing. And they can have this middleman in the middle that will translate back and forth to whatever database type you happen to be using. That is the Open Database component of the ODBC. Now, ODBC is great, but it was not one of the functions that we listed on the list on the left there. We also didn't have an answer for Event Viewer, which is a great way to list out all of the different events. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events happening all the time inside of our windows. It's almost overwhelming. You have to be very good at filtering if you're going to be working inside the Event Viewer. But if you're trying to find that one thing that happened on a computer, it's in that Event Viewer haystack. You just have to find that needle. And the better you are at filtering, the better Event Viewer is going to be for you. And the last thing on our list was the local security policy. We didn't have any of these functions for local security policy, but if someone needed to modify how passwords were stored, the complexity of the passwords, who can log in and when, a lot of that is done inside of the local security policy or global security policy if you are in a domain environment. So hopefully that's given you some insight into some of these Windows utilities. This is just a sample of the Windows utilities that you need to know for your exam. If you didn't recognize any of these, or you would like a complete list of these Windows utilities, go to the CompTIA Exam Objectives. They tell you everything that you need to know. Let's do some more questions. Fortunately, we're done, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're done with our performance-based question of the month. Let's do a multiple choice-based question, which will be the bulk of the exam that you take. This next question asks, which of the following would be the best way to initialize a file system on a storage device? Which of the following would be the best way to initialize a file system on a storage device? Would it be SFC? Would it be check disk? Would it be DISM? Would it be format? Or would it be GP update? So which of the following would be the best way to initialize a file system on a storage device? SFC, check disk, DISM, format, or GP update. Got 5 options to choose from. If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Please know hints or answers in the chat room. Be able to put those right into professormesser.com/QA. Be able to figure out those details. Whenever I start breaking out and trying to figure out where I want to break out all of these different details, it's really, I have to look at the question and see what they're asking and try to break out what they're looking for. This is a pretty straightforward question. It's a one-sentence question. It's not very similar to the type of questions on your exam. The exam questions tend to give you a scenario that Jack is initializing or needing to initialize a file system on a storage device. What is the utility that Jack would use to perform that function? So it's a much longer question. I've kind of shortened them down because there's only so much time we have and only so much room on my screen. But it's going to be a similar situation. Now, if you don't know, and in the chat rooms, people even mention this, they're just guessing. Just take a guess. And with multiple choice, you should absolutely do this. Multiple choice questions do not penalize you for getting a question wrong, from what we're able to tell of the scoring, which means if you take a guess and you get it right, you get free points and no penalty for doing that. So never leave questions blank on your exam. Never, 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 never leave questions blank. Always pick what you think is close to being the answer. Take an educated guess and do not submit that exam until every question has been answered. Don't allow the clock to run out until every question has been answered. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of the following would be the best way to initialize file system on a storage device? We had the choice between SFC, check disk, DISM format, and GP update. And how did we do? Well, 61%, not a huge majority, but a majority nonetheless, said we would use format. We've got 17% that said we would use check disk to do something like that. And we also have 10% each, a tie for third between SFC and DISM. And lastly, 3% of you, very small group, said GP update. Well, the key here is we have a storage system and we want to initialize a file system. And initializing a file system is often done using the format command. It's not the only place that you can initialize file systems, but it is one of the more common areas to initialize a file system. The format command's been around forever. It's been around since the DOS days, so it's one that is very familiar to folks that need to initialize the file system itself. The file system being the index, the master index of where everything is being stored on this drive, and it allows your operating system to find those files, store the files, retrieve the files. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any way to look up where anything was. So formatting it with a file system is an important step to getting things installed onto a computer. You couldn't do it unless you had a formatted drive. In this particular case, I'm formatting a drive. Looks like it's a very small drive, probably a USB drive, 2 gig, and it's a FAT32 file system. Not even using NTFS or EXFAT on that one. It's just using FAT32 to have that there. This is a format process that you have to go through. If you're installing Windows, it runs through the format process as a quick format or a full format, and you see it on the screen as more of a graphical display. But if you're running it at the command line with format, that's what it looks like. You do have to be careful with this. Don't run this on your system that has data. This, as the word mentions there, this will initialize the file system. This deletes everything. Using the format command, you can lose data easily. So that's why when you're formatting, be very careful of which drive letter you're choosing. Make sure you're very, very clear on which drive you're formatting. You don't want to accidentally format the wrong drive. That would be really, really, really bad. Fortunately, it's one that I don't hear a lot of people doing, but that could be very, very bad. So I like to tell people in red letters, be very, very careful to be able to do that. It's not a situation you want to be in to be able to make that happen. So that's why 61% of you that chose format, that's absolutely correct. That is the right answer. The format command is the one you would use. If you're ever working through the different options here, we had 17% of you that said check disk. Check disk will perform a check of the file system and indeed of the physical disk itself. If you have a spinning hard drive, that will check the file system and make sure that none of the files are in the wrong place. You ever have somebody file a physical file in the wrong place? Well, I can't find it. It's supposed to be under M. It's not under M. And being able to work through that. The check disk command checks it to make sure that everything has been put into the right place and fixes any problems that it happens to find. We've got other utilities here like the system file checker and DISM and GP update. Those are other utilities that will check the file consistency of other things. It will check for updates for the systems that we're using to manage with our global policies, but it's not any of those utilities will be used for initializing a file system. This should really pop out and show you format as being really what we were looking for. And 62% of you did answer D, format, got it absolutely correct. Let's do another question. I've got this one, by the way, for those of you wondering. All of these are from the A+ 220-1002 exam objectives. This is objective 1.4. And if you want to look that up, the video that has this is the Microsoft Command Line Tools video. I always put that right in the bottom of each one of those. You'll be able to find it. Let's do another question and be able to break this out. The next question asks, which of the following would provide the best security for a wireless network? Would it be CCNP, MAC filtering, TKIP, SSID suppression, or WPS? Perhaps not the answers you thought would be for this question. The question asks, which of the following would provide the best security for a wireless network? Would it be CCNP, MAC filtering, TKIP, SSID suppression, or WPS? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, and you can lock in your answer. No hints in the chat room, no answers in the chat room. We want to figure out exactly which one this happens to be. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. This is also another type of situation where people think they know what the answer is going to be. They look at the answers, and the answer they thought is not there. But the question is always one that's important to look at. The question asks, which of the following would be the best? It's not asking what is the best. It's not giving you a blank line. You fill in what it happens to be. It's saying, of the list of things that I'm giving to you, tell me which one of these is the best. I think people sometimes get thrown by these questions and the way they're asked. It's a very common way to ask questions on the exam. And it's one that makes you think, because normally the most common thing you're thinking of is not in that list, which now makes you think, now what's my second best, what's my third best, what's my fourth best, and go down that link. And you'll be able to figure out what the best one might be. This one takes a little bit of familiarity with wireless network and security as well to be able to lock in this answer and see what it happens to be. I have not looked to see how you've answered. I always like this to be a surprise for myself, so I can't wait to see how we did with this one. When I write these questions, I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. I don't want it to be so easy that 100% of you get it right, but I don't want it to be so complex and difficult that nobody gets it right. We have 0% getting it right. I like it to be about as hard as an actual exam question might be. So that's why you see me using some of the same terminology, some of the same methods that they use for the exam to kind of get you ready for that, because I think that's going to be important when you sit down for that exam. Let's see how we did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would provide the best security for a wireless network? Is it CCNP, MAC filtering, TKIP, SSID suppression, or WPS? And we are completely torn. We have no idea what it happens to be. We have 27% said MAC filtering, 25% said TKIP, 23% said WPS, 13% said CCNP, and 11% said SSID suppression. So I know a number of you right now are thinking, well, which one then? We really didn't even come close to getting a majority here. The important part about this question is you needed to understand what the best possible encryption is for a wireless network, or one of the best types of encryption available on a wireless network. You should have automatically thought, well, WPA2 would be the encryption type that would really be the best possible encryption type on a wireless network. And then you would also have to know that the underlying method that is used to provide the confidentiality and integrity on a WPA2 network is CCNP. CCNP is counter mode with cipher block chaining message authentication code protocol, and it is the methodology, the cipher block, the encryption method that is used in WPA2 that effectively replaced TKIP. TKIP was the method used in WPA, which really wasn't around very long in the big scheme of things. It was the method that we created to replace WEP, which obviously was really bad. WEP was a bad one. So when we got rid of WEP, we needed something, an interim version, and WPA was the interim. WPA did use TKIP. But WPA2 was the final one, the one we've been using, it seems like forever now, that uses CCNP as the block cipher mode, which uses AES to be able to provide the confidentiality, does the encryption effectively inside of WPA2 with AES. So there's also authentication, access control. WPA2, just a great protocol that got us up to this point. The next version of this will be WPA3, which adds a number of very useful functions to be able to do this. And we're updating WPA2, not because WPA2 has any vulnerabilities, because we haven't found any significant problems with WPA2, but there's some new features we would like in the encryption that we're doing. And so you'll see new versions of encryption with WPA3 come along very, very soon. You'll see it start to roll out. I don't know if it's been ratified yet. I know we were close, but then we have to wait for all of the manufacturers to begin rolling that out on their drivers, on their adapter cards, on their access points, and that as well. So it's one of those situations to work through. So if you answered A, CCNP, only 13% of us chose CCNP. What a mess. We really weren't even quite sure what to choose here. And I agree, this was kind of a hard question. So I would not jump at that one very quickly and have a look at it. Let's look at the other answers you had here and figure out why were those not better than CCNP. Well, CCNP we already know is encryption. There's authentication. It's the block cipher mode. It uses AES. That's a very strong security method. So let's see if any of these others come close. 28% of you said MAC filtering. MAC filtering, obviously an administrative function that's available on many access points where you can limit who is able to access the network based on their physical hardware address, their media access control address, the MAC address. that MAC address can be easily spoofed. I can change a MAC address and get onto a wireless network in a matter of seconds. You sniff the network, see what MAC addresses are there, and then change your MAC address to be one that's already on the network. Easy, lemon squeezy. That is not a security method. It's not a security technique. Has nothing to do with security. MAC filtering is more of an administrative tool that is only slightly helpful when it comes to doing anything administratively. And that's why on really anybody's enterprise networks, you'll never see MAC filtering used. It's just too inappropriate. It doesn't work. It's difficult to manage. There's much better ways to manage access to the network. And in most larger networks, even small networks, they're using 802.1x, which is the authentication method to gain access to that network. 24% of you said TCAP, as we mentioned already. That is the method that was used inside of WPA. But even TCAP, we have found a number of vulnerabilities with. And so TCAP is not something we would want to use inside of WPA either. WPS is the method that would allow people access to a network. It's an authentication method that uses primarily a PIN, personal identification number, and we found vulnerabilities with that one as well. Many people have turned off WPS because of that. It doesn't provide any inherent encryption either. That's just a method to gain access to a network. And lastly, 10% of you chose SSID suppression. SSID suppression will cause your access point to disappear from the list of available networks. But as long as somebody knows the network name, they can easily connect to it manually. And when somebody does connect to the network, if you're doing a packet capture, you can easily find the name of the network also. So that's not a security feature either. That, again, is more of an administrative function on an access point. So there's our summary, and that's why CCNP is the best security for a wireless network given those 5 options. Hopefully that's a little bit clear, and you can see why we would choose that. Well, that gives you an idea. Just those 5 different things alone give you an idea of the scope of the 221,002. That's just a single section for security and working through some of those. But obviously the A+ exam covers hardware, it covers printers, there's networking, there's security, there's operating systems, there's Mac OS, there's Linux, there's Windows. We need to do so much. And on top of all that, we have to do troubleshooting with all of those. This can be involved. Now, obviously, I have all of my videos available, and I always recommend for people to go through the videos and take notes. But there are well over 100 videos at this point. You have hours and hours and hours of videos that you would have to go through to make your own set of notes. So what I did was create notes for you. I created a set that have all of my notes in a single PDF, all in a single index that goes video by video, documenting exactly the text and the content that's in every single one of the videos. All the charts, all the graphics, all the text, it's in here. So I designed this to be one single place that summarizes every single one of the videos that I have. This is also a good place to go to have, once you've read the books, once you've watched the videos, once you've done your hands-on and gone through your Q&A, and you just need a quick summary of all of the information for the exam, this is the quick summary. In fact, the 221,002 course notes are 51 pages long, 50 pages long, exactly, 50. So there's a lot of questions in there as well. There is a digital version that you can purchase right there for $20. There's also a physical version, costs a little bit more, but it is the same content, just in, it's printed on paper. You may have seen that before. These dead trees that we get and print things on. It's full color. It is one that is perfect bound, like a paperback book, high quality paper. I wouldn't do it any other way. And if you purchase the physical book, you get the digital book for free. So while you're waiting on this to arrive in your mailbox, you can download the digital one. And I'm absolutely still shipping these things. They are printed on demand. When you buy it, I print it just for you, and I ship it off to you. You'll find information on that if you want to know more at professormesser.com/1000notes. It's a great place to go to learn more about any of our course notes for the 221,001 or the 221,002. That's at professormesser.com/1000notes to get more of that. They ship out of a third party that I use, great folks that I use in Utah. So in the middle of the country, gets to anywhere in the country very quickly, and I ship internationally as well. Costs a little bit more to ship internationally. but you'll see that during checkout depending on where you happen to live. Let's do some more questions. Oh, by the way, thank you. For those of you in the chat room, and you've mentioned I have these notes. I've used these notes. They're fantastic notes. Thank you so much for your support. They really do go a long way to keeping the lights on here and allowing us to continue to do these study groups. So thanks again. Let's do some more of the study group. The next question asks, a system administrator has just installed a new USB adapter card, but devices connected to the card are not working. Which of the following would be the best way to view the status of the USB card? Would it be Device Manager, Event Viewer, Task Manager, Services, or System Information? A system administrator has just installed a new USB adapter card, but devices connected to the card are not working. Which of the following would be the best way to view the status of the USB card? Would it be Device Manager, Event Viewer, Task Manager, Services, or System Information? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer, what you think it might be. And again, please note answers in the chat room. So folks who are asking, they know that I have 2 days ago, I announced and released my 220-1001 practice exam book, a brand new book. Obviously, today we're talking about the 220-1002 exam. And there is not a book, a practice exam book for that yet. Now I get to write the book. So if you're wanting to know when the ETA will be for that, I can't say that an ETA will be anything that I can estimate, but I'm hoping that I can have it done in 3 months. That would be nice. But I'm also don't have that as a solid line in the stake in the ground either, line in the sand, a drop dead date, a deadline. I don't know when that will be done. Obviously, who knows? It's crazy right now with timing and scheduling. We never know what's going to happen month to month. So I'm just going to sit here and just keep typing. So that's kind of what I do anyway. So hopefully the practice exams would be available. I would like them to come out in 3 months. I think if I work through that, I can make that happen. But sometimes they go longer. Sometimes they go shorter. And when it gets done and I'm happy with it, that's when I'll publish it. I am not the kind of person to release a product that I'm not happy with. I do not set a date and whatever happens, whatever we have in that date hits, that's when we're releasing it. That's not how I work. I wait until the product is ready and then I release it. So that's why you never see these hard release dates from me, because I never know exactly how things are going to go in my life and figuring out the details. Let's see how we did with this question. A system administrator has just installed a new USB adapter card specifically, but devices connected to the card are not working. So my USB drive is not working. Which of the following would be the best way to view the status of the USB card? 88% of you say that it's Device Manager. 88% of you say that's got to be it. That's a vast majority. That's a huge majority. That's a huge number. Single digits for everything else, for System Information, for Event Viewer, for Services, or for Task Manager. So there's a lot of options that everybody said, nope, it's not any of those. I know about this one. I know there's things that I can do. Lots of options there. So that one is one that hopefully you're familiar with. You probably used this before. It's a great utility. If you want to know anything about the hardware connections and the things that you're plugging into your computer and you're wanting to know why is this not working, or is this working properly, and what type of information can I get from it, then that would be Device Manager. So if you're ever trying to figure out a device isn't working, we can do that. If you want to know why a service has failed to start, that's another good way to do it. So all of those can be really, really useful. So hopefully that's one that you're very familiar with. It's certainly something you should know in the troubleshooting section of the exam objectives. And it's also something you need to know when you're looking at the Windows utilities. We've already talked about this utility once today in this study group, but if you go to the 220-1002 exam objectives, section 3.1 on troubleshooting Windows, you will find these specific problems like device not starting and one or more services failed to start. So that's where that starting the system comes from, the starting the system information comes from. So that might help you as you go through this and become more familiar with these utilities. Know more than just what the name is. You should always know, how do I use this utility? How does this utility provide me with a feature or a function? Those are the questions that you're going to get whenever you start working with the exam objectives and when you sit down for the exam. So hopefully that's one that you are familiar with. And this one, you were very familiar. The correct answer indeed is 88% of you that chose device manager. That device manager that's on, you couldn't even see it on the screen because it was so high up on the screen to be able to have it there. Maybe I can move it for you. Get my head out of the way. We'll move it down just a little bit so that whenever you see the device manager listed on the screen, here it is. See, it's device manager. Now you can actually read it. Here's a little, we're doing it live, folks. So we have to move things around on the fly. So we'll make sure we have all of those things there. Hopefully that will be familiar to you next time you're ready to look up how the status of hardware happens to be. So that's definitely where you should go. Let's do another question. I've got more here. The next question is about developers, our favorite people. Sometimes this particular question asks, an application developer is creating code that will add an interactive shopping cart to the user's browser. Which of the following would be most likely used for this task? Would it be Python? Would it be a shell script? Would it be JavaScript? Would it be Microsoft Visual Basic Scripting Edition? Or would it be a batch file? 5 different options. An application developer is creating code that will add an interactive shopping cart to the user's browser. Which of the following would be most likely used for this task? Would it be Python? Would it be shell script? Would it be JavaScript? Would it be Microsoft Visual Basic Scripting Edition? Would it be batch file? One of those 5. If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Yes, indeed, this is a A+ question. Scripting is a new section in the 220-1002, and so you will get questions about scripting and scripting languages right there on the exam objectives. We'll talk about which specific objective in just a moment. You can answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. Follow the link on the screen, professormesser.com/QA, or type into your browser, professormesser.com/QA. I'm not sure what the QA is for. We just chose some letters, stuck them up there. QA. That will get you exactly where you need to go to be able to do that. Whenever you start working through these questions, by the way, and you don't know the answer, it would be very, very useful if you were able to go through and really break down the different options that are there and then try to see if you can find the answer that you were missing. I think that would probably be the most useful part of this. It's calculatus eliminatus sometimes. It's trying to find the answer that perhaps you just don't know, but you know what it isn't. So that may be the best way to go there. Hopefully that can help you as you work through though. So I think whenever we start working through these, it becomes more of a challenge. Let's see how you did with the challenge, though. An application developer is creating code that will add an interactive shopping cart to the user's browser. I think we've all seen those before, right? Which of the following would be most likely used for this task? Python, shell script, JavaScript, Microsoft Visual Basic Scripting Edition, or batch file? 66%. That's a pretty good majority say it's JavaScript. You chose C, JavaScript, for this one. 14% of you chose Python. Why wouldn't it be Python? Doesn't Python do everything? Python will change the tire in your car. Python makes coffee. Why wouldn't it be Python? We'll talk about that in a moment. 9% of you said shell script. 8% of you said Microsoft Visual Basic Scripting Edition. And only 3% of you said batch file. And the Python people in the chat room are angry with me for making bad things, saying bad things about their Python. I'm not saying bad things. I think Python's pretty awesome. It does not change your tire. And I know this because I've had to change a tire recently. JavaScript is the answer here. If you want to script inside your browser, this is the one that is really the best choice for this. Now, this is different, by the way, than Java. You've probably seen Java, which is a programming language, a proper programming language. You can build apps in Java. JavaScript is not related to Java, even though JavaScript has the same name. JavaScript doesn't do the same thing Java does. JavaScript and Java are only connected by those 4 letters, Java. Otherwise, they're completely different things, made for completely different reasons by completely different people. Isn't that confusing? But there it is. That's what we're stuck with in our industry. JavaScript, and there's a reason we don't use Java anymore for most things. But if we ever want to do something inside of a browser, you want to automate a function inside of a browser, make a screen, do a particular function. For instance, if you, on my website, if you're filling out a form so I can mail you the course notes that you purchased, you go through and put your address in, and it performs an address check to make sure that nothing is wrong. Make sure you put the right state in, to make sure the zip code is correct. It verifies the address, and I use JavaScript to be able to do that. It allows you to add a lot of interactivity to browser pages, and you'll find it used on, I guess, every site in the world is using JavaScript in some way, shape, or form. Just remember that people will tell you Java is bad. Java has huge vulnerabilities. Java is very specific in the things you can do with it. Java has its place, but Java is not something you should run in a browser. But JavaScript is absolutely something you should run in a browser. So that's one of those situations where you really do have to understand the terminology we use and where it's used. Make sure you're familiar with those, because that could be a problem. That could be confusing if you've never seen that before and working through it. If you're watching this study group for continuing education unit credit, then you want to follow these instructions to receive an email from me that is digitally signed that says you must have watched this study group. And you can do this whether you're watching the study group live or whether you're watching the study group on an on-demand replay. So what you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. If you do that, there's a link for Contact Us. Click that Contact Us link. And that Contact Us link will open up a form. Put on that form your name, put your email address, make sure it's right, because I'm emailing these things back to you. There's a subject line. In that subject line, if you'd be nice enough to put that this is the April 1002 A+ study group. And on its own line in the body of the message, if you could put the super secret code word of the month, JavaScript. That is the super secret code word of the month, JavaScript, and send that to me. It takes me about a week to process these. So if you send it and you're wondering, why have I not gotten a response back yet? That's because I'm doing this right now. Usually I do it on the weekends where I have some time so I can get through all of them. It's an automated process, the little script I run on my side, but I have to verify them and kind of get them ready to go and email them out. So I do them one at a time. And you can also put any other message you like in there. I'm reading through these one at a time. I can't necessarily respond to every single one of them, but I read every single message you put into those, just so you're aware. I'm the one who's taking care of these, so you can put any message you would like to me. If you care, or not, just put the word JavaScript's all I need. I know what you're looking for. I'll send it to you. I got you covered. I got you back. Now, why wouldn't it be one of these others? JavaScript is one that's the obvious choice. Python, 14% of you said, why wouldn't it be Python? Python is not built into a browser. If you've not installed it on your computer, it's not on your computer. It's not built into the operating system of a computer. If somebody handed you a Python script and said, run this, and you never had downloaded Python before, you couldn't do anything with that. It's not going to help you. You have to first install Python, which in itself is a nice scripting language, but you're going to have to install it so that you can run the script and then have your system perform those functions from that script. So that is why probably not the best choice for an interactive shopping cart in a user's browser, because none of your browsers are going to have Python installed. Now, Python, a fabulous tool for automation, for automating what's happening in your infrastructure. If you've ever worked in system administration, network administration, and security, there's tons of things that you need to automate. In the world of the cloud, we call this orchestration, because it's more than just automation. It really is so many different moving parts working like an orchestra. And Python is turned into kind of the de facto scripting automation language we use for these types of functions. It kind of fits the needs of a lot of different people on a very broad level. It doesn't try to do too much. It tries to do exactly what it does, and it does it very well. So if you're doing anything with automation, you're doing any type of scripting, Python's probably what you'll be using in your environment to be able to work there. The Linux people in the chat room are mentioning to me, no, Linux distributions have Python in them. and I stand corrected, I look forward to your calls and letters. There are some Linux distributions that do include Python. Linux in and of itself does not. And I'm also looking forward to getting your Stallman emails to me about why it's not Linux. So I look forward to those every week too. We've got other scripts on here. Shell script is a good example of a script that you would run in the shell of your computer. It's commonly a Linux shell that we're referring to when we talk about shell script. If you're running a script or an automation of Windows, it's usually a PowerShell script or a batch file, which is also listed in this list. And lastly, if you're doing any type of scripting in a Microsoft application, such as Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint even, there's scripting inside of those, and they use their own scripting language called Microsoft Visual Basic Scripting Edition. Obviously, not everybody who's using a browser is using a Microsoft browser, so that probably would not be the best choice either. The only one here that really fits, although I said most likely used for this task, you could really say the only one that really fits for this task is the one that 67% of you chose, which is C JavaScript. That's your best choice. And a good choice at that. We have time for some more. Let's fit another one in, right? We can get there. For those of you asking about continuing education unit credits, for the A+, 4 webinar credits per renewal period is what they will accept. So for that 3-year renewal, it's 4 credits total. Of the, what do you need to renew an A+ these days? 20 credits? 20 or 30, something like that. So of that 20 or 30, you can watch 4 of these study groups and get 4 hours worth. For the other hours that you need, you're going to have to go somewhere else. I'm so sorry. I wish you could watch all of my videos all the way through all of my study groups and get all of the credits you would ever need. CompTIA doesn't allow you to do that, and you might be sorry when you're done anyway. So that's one of those situations. Maybe it's best for all of us. Let's do another question. I've got another question for you that asks, a system administrator needs to remotely configure a laptop. Why would he need to do that? Which of the following would be the best utility for this task? Would it be MMC? Would it be defrag? Would it be remote? Would it be regedit? Would it be MSTSC? So there's 5 different options. The question, a system administrator needs to remotely configure a laptop. Which of the following would be the best utility for this task? Would it be MMC, defrag, remote, regedit, MSTSC? Maybe you know the answer. If you think you do, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to lock in your answer using this link right down here at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock it in. Other questions in the chat room while we're locking in our answer. What about Security Plus continuing education units? How many units do you need? On the CompTIA website, they tell you how many you can use. I think you need 50 CEUs for Security Plus, and I think you can get 10 webinar. I might be wrong with that, but somewhere close to that. You need a lot more CEUs to renew your Security Plus, and you can use a lot more from the different categories. So that's kind of useful. These days, I don't know if anybody's really collecting CEUs anymore. I'm providing them because I think it's useful to have some type of way to verify to a third party through this digitally signed email. But I think a lot of people are using other methods. If you go to the YouTube and you type in how to renew your CompTIA exam in just a few hours, I have a video that describes all of the different methods for renewing a certification. And I also tell you how to renew your certification in just a few hours without doing any CEUs. How's that possible? Well, I tell you how. It doesn't apply to everybody, and it doesn't apply to Security Plus right now, unfortunately. But it applies right now currently to A Plus and Network Plus. So some things there. That is how to renew your CompTIA certification. Put that in. You'll find my video on how to do that. Very useful to have that there. So you can collect 20 of these webinar category study group CEUs. You just can't use all 20 of them. So sorry. And if you don't have a certification already, these CEUs won't help you at all. You can only start earning them once you are certified. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, a system administrator needs to remotely configure a laptop. Which of the following would be the best utility for this task? Would it be MMC, defrag, remote, regedit, or MSTSC? Again, we're a little torn. really between two different ones. We would either use remote, or 45% of you said remote, 37% of you said MSTSC, 13% said MMC, 4% said regedit, 1% said defrag. I know, but that's there. It sounds like something you could use. Defrag, maybe. Remotely configure, sort of. Kind of in the name, maybe not. The thing that you're looking for here is remotely configuring a laptop. We would do this using remote desktop, of course. But why isn't remote desktop listed there? Well, that's because the executable for remote desktop is not called remote desktop, remote, or RDP. It's actually the Microsoft Terminal Services Client, or MSTSC. Who knew? Why don't they just call it RDP? Why don't they just call it remote desktop? Seems like it would be remote, but it's not. It's MSTSC. It's not. That's just one of those weird things with the way they name things in Windows. If you run that command, you get the remote desktop connection. It brings it up on the screen and says remote desktop. It's not a trick. That is the actual name of it. This is legitimately what the name is. So MSTSC is what you need. Now, what they call it that has a real name. And it's called that because back in the day, the server that we used for these people to connect to remotely was called the Terminal Services server. It's Terminal Services. Hey, is Terminal Services up and running? I need to connect from my remote location. Hey, we're having people that can't log in remotely. We need to fix Terminal Services. Now this functionality is built into a lot of different things. It uses the same protocols it's always used with remote desktop, but the name of the client never changed. In Windows, it's still called the Terminal Services Client. So if you are connecting to a server, you're connecting to a remote device, that's how you do it. You either run MSTSC from your start or directly from the command line. Either way would work just fine and be able to use that. Nice functionality, one you have to have. If you're in a different operating system that's different utilities, still a similar thing. You can still have that remote desktop functionality. I have a remote desktop for Windows. Let's see if I can find this on my computer. Microsoft has a remote desktop connection utility. It looks very different on Mac OS. Here's the utility on Mac OS. It's from Microsoft, and I can connect to these devices. Here's my internal IP addressing scheme. You obviously can't connect to that from where you are. But remote terminal services, it all is a similar thing. So that gives you that remote access to that third-party device. And that's why MSTSC, if you answer E, 38% of you got that absolutely right. Remote is not a thing. That's one of those interesting scenarios you do run into on the exam where they will give you an answer that doesn't actually exist. They will give you something that does not, in the world of whatever we are doing here, isn't real. I don't commonly put those kind of answers in my study group questions, but that one was just too easy. So it's a remote desktop. Let's just say remote. I even used remote in the question. I need to remotely configure a laptop. Well, of course, you'd use the remote command. That's what I would use. It makes perfect sense. I'm with the 45% of you that chose remote, but it isn't. It's one of those where we do have to know the quirk of the naming conventions in Windows. So that's why it would not be remote. It would not be the Microsoft Management Console, the MMC, which effectively is a blank slate that allows you to plug in or connect different modules to it. And you could potentially find a remote module to connect to the Microsoft Management Console that would allow you to click and use the Microsoft Terminal Services Client. Why would you go through all those steps when you can just run the Microsoft Terminal Services Client? That's why the question asks which of the following would be the best utility for this task. And the best one is the one that you can use fastest and easiest. MSTSC is the right answer there. Would not be regedit. This is the registry editor. It allows us to modify the registry of a Windows machine where they store all those bazillion different configuration settings for your Windows desktop. If you ever need to destroy Windows, you can do it inside of regedit, which means before you make any changes inside regedit, there's the option there to back up the hive. That's what they call the section of the registry you're working on. You can back up the hive that you're working on, And if you mess it up, you can simply restore the hive so that everything is working back the way it was before. And lastly, defrag. Well, as some of you have mentioned in the chat room, this is the defragmentation utility that allows you to speed up the access to traditional spinning hard drives. Defrag would not be the right answer either. It doesn't do anything with remote access to a laptop. It doesn't provide any remote functionality whatsoever. Defrag would definitely not be the answer that we would be looking for. All of the questions today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, every single one of them. Make sure you have a copy of the exam objectives. You can find it at professormesser.com/objectives. These are a huge, detailed checklist. They tell you everything you need to know to be able to pass your exam. If you know everything that's in these objectives, you're going to have no problem on your exam. That's how important these objectives are. So make sure that you're very familiar with the objectives. A direct link is at professormesser.com/objectives. You can have a link that takes you right to the CompTIA website where you can download those and be able to work through those. Now, for those of you that have used defrag before, a question in the chat room, does defrag erase data on a hard drive at all? It does not erase anything. It simply rearranges what you have there. It makes it neatens things up on your drive. What I should be doing here in my studio, neatening things up instead of just throwing things around. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody came along behind me and straightened things up for me? That's what defrag does. They don't throw anything out, no basura, but it does seem to neaten things up quite nicely on a hard drive that is if you have a hard drive really, really fragmented, it can speed things up a little bit. Let's talk about where you would have more of these study groups. We've done an hour of this already. We can do more of these study groups. Hold on just a moment. We have one of these study groups we do every month of the year. We have two more next month for A+. On May 5th and May 7th, we do another set of A+ study groups. Please come back for those. We have a study group for Network Plus on May the 13th and one for Security Plus on the 20th. And this month, we still have Network Plus and Security Plus study groups to do. If you're ever wondering when the next one is going to be, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and be able to find out when the next event. So if you're looking at this and you're way past May, we're even close to May, then you can always find out when is the next live event going to be, professormesser.com/calendar. Well, this part is the ending of the kind of the formal Q&A where I ask you questions, but now we start the part where you ask me questions. So I open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. This is what we call our after show. So feel free to get your question. It can be about anything. It can be about the A+. It can be about CompTIA. It can be about IT in general. It can be about career questions. It could be about what I'm playing on Xbox. I really don't care. You can ask anything you'd like. Again, don't forget about our daily pop quiz questions on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter, or on Instagram, professormesser.com/Instagram, or you can get them in your email by visiting the link on the homepage of professormesser.com. Don't forget about subscribing. If you like this, subscribe on YouTube. You'll get a notification if you click the bell every time we put a new study group out, and it also helps us. I had a meeting this week with my YouTube rep where we talked about things that are going on with YouTube and how we're handling things right now. I'm only able to do that thanks to your support. You clicking those subscribe buttons is incredibly important, and it really does help what we're doing here. Don't forget about my course notes, another great way to help, by going to professormesser.com/1000notes. And if you're buying things on Amazon, don't forget about our Amazon link, professormesser.com/Amazon. Thanks for joining us. Stick around for the second hour. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Well, let's see if I can get all the phone lines up and running. I've got a few things I need to type in on my side, so if you'll bear with me for just a moment. I'm going to take questions from the chat room, so if you have questions, hold them just a moment because I'm not looking at the chat room right now. I'm logging into my cloud-based call-in system. Everything's in the cloud these days, isn't it? Which means I have to call into my own call-in show. I'm the first caller. I'm always the first caller. Let's see what this happens to say. There we go. And we can type in a set of numbers. Oh, #.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, that sounds redundant. I'll type in my 6-digit PIN number. And the nice lady says,
host.
welcome, host. That would be me. Now that we are logged in, you can put your questions into the chat room. You can also call in on voice, on a telephone. It's a phone number, a toll-free number in the United States, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. We've also got a way to call in from anywhere in the world for free by using Skype. Skype doesn't charge you or doesn't require Skype minutes to call a toll-free number. So you simply use +1 at the beginning. So it'll be +1 855-785-7545. That's where you need to go to be able to put those in there. Very useful to be able to call in. You're welcome to call in on those. We'll also take questions from the chat room as well so that you can get any of those and be able to break those through. I like that we're getting troubleshooting questions about Xbox, though, immediately in the chat room. And I can tell you the best way to troubleshoot Xbox, have you turned it off and back on again. Right now, Microsoft is getting overwhelmed, as I'm sure Sony and Nintendo are as well. So many people at home. Kids are not in school. Everybody's working from home with their Xbox. I'm working from home, boss, on Division 2. And so all of their online systems are just overwhelmed with traffic and being able to work through those. So pretty useful to know how to troubleshoot. But most of the time with Xbox, what we found is that the problem is on Microsoft's side because they're just overwhelmed in being able to work through. They've scaled up pretty well, I noticed. They're doing much better lately. But right there at the beginning, nobody was prepared for this. So really a lot to work through. Yes, that is a direct. Have you turned it off and back on again? I should have it on a tape, just an audio tape going through the old style audio, and have that there. That's those are easy things you can do to help fix. And I find myself having to do it on Xbox too, to have those there. Pretty useful. And if you're in Division 2, then you probably have seen me in there at night, so I can work all day here and then get the frustrations out once I'm working through that again. Yes, the chroma key is so seamless, isn't it? Through the mesh chair in the back. What's even more seamless is that's real. So that's even better. Is that is not fakey behind me. There's a real set that I built behind me. And that's why things move around all the time and why it's a little different. In fact, I changed a few things with it before we went online right now. So that's where that came from. The microphone I use is a Heil PR40. If you'd like to know more information on what we use here with our equipment, because we got a lot of it, we've got video switchers and audio systems and microphones and displays and laptops and other things. You can find that on the link on my homepage under the information section, or you can just go to professormesser.com/studio and you'll be able to see all of those things as well. It's a great mic. I've had it since the very beginning of making videos, now well over 15 years ago. Fantastic microphone. I will never, ever change this mic. Just a phenomenal mic to have. Let's go to some phone calls, though. 662 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Matt McDaniel. I'm calling from Caledonia,
Hi, Matt.
Mississippi. I had a question about how you can order the practice exam that you have written out for A+.
Well, what a great question, and thank you so much for calling. That's a great way to start up the after show, because I haven't gotten a sales page, an information page up for people to see it yet. As I mentioned earlier, I have created a practice exam book for the 220-1001 exam. I do not have one yet for the 220-1002. It's currently in process of being written. But the 1001 exam, you can, I do a description of what it's about on the last study group. So if somebody was watching the last study group, you'd be able to actually see the practice exams there. But if you wanted to purchase sight unseen, I have a link available at professormesser.com/core1PE. because the Core 1 exam, CORE number 1 PE for practice exam. And that would take you right to the purchase page. Not a lot of detail there. This weekend, I'm putting together a full product description page so you can really see what that's like. There'll be a little video that goes along with it so you can see what the book is a little bit like, so that the people will be able to make a decision on whether they want to purchase that or not. Or you can simply see the things we did on the study group 2 days ago, and you get a nice demonstration from there too when I step through it. But that's where that came from. I appreciate the interest.
I appreciate it because I'm getting ready to take the 101 as soon as this pandemic's over, so I need as much practice as I can get.
Perfect timing and a great way to go through and see if you've really learned all those things, because that's exactly why I built that practice exam book.
All right, well, much appreciated.
Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. And it's another one of those ways we keep the lights on. I don't mind making all of my videos absolutely free when I've got support from people like you that are able to purchase course notes and practice exams, and you're really purchasing those things so that people who can't can get those videos for free as well. I love the way that works. It just all works together, and it's all so much better for everybody. Everybody thinks the background is not a real background here. The motherboard I have back there, which one do I have back there? It's I want to say it's an old, I even forget the format. It's an old Intel motherboard. I have to remember which one it is. It's from an old sniffer. The actual distributed sniffer Pentium product is a Pentium motherboard, as I recall, and having those things there. That's what that is. An NLX motherboard is what that is. Took a moment for that synapse to fire, didn't it? That is an NLX motherboard. I know it's difficult to see because it's a little bit blurry, but it's right there. The whole thing back there. There's the picture of the Atari joystick. There's a HF receiver. There's a Mac cube. There's all kinds of things going on back there, but that's what that motherboard is. It's an NLX motherboard. It's an old motherboard. There's some other old stuff there you can't even see that's up higher, but that's why that's there. And yeah, I can kind of see why people would think that's not a real background either, but it absolutely is. Let's go back to the phone call, 740. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from? Caller.
Hi, Professor. My name is Thomas. Can you hear me?
Hi, Thomas. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to thank you for everything that you do. And I've just recently started joining the live study groups because of my own personal schedule, but I really like them and they're very helpful. So thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
My question is, I asked it in the chat and I kind of forget about it. And now I'm nervous, but
it's got to be in there somewhere, though. Anybody know what Thomas was?
The 1002 exam. What would you recommend, since you just released your practice exams for the 1001, what would you recommend for Q&A for the 1002? That was the question. I'm sorry.
That's a great question, because I can't help with that right now, obviously, because I don't have that 1002 book out quite yet. But if you go to the Professor Messer website, I've already planned for this. And same thing applies for these other exams that I don't necessarily have anything available to show you right now. But if you go to my website, on each of the pull-down menus, I have a pull-down menu for Core 1, Core 2, Network Plus, Security Plus, whatever it happens to be. In that pull-down menu at the very bottom is the A+ study recommendations. And that will take you to a page that gives you a list of things that I recommend for any of your studies, not just Q&A, but also things like good books. So I list out just a few of the books that I recommend for the A+ certification. I list out hands-on lab type books for the A+ certification, and I list out Q&A books. There are indeed other Q&A books out on the market. You have your choice for all of these, but the 1002 questions, the practice test, there's a good one here from Cybex that has complete practice tests for Exam Core 1 and Exam Core 2, and Exam Cram makes a book for the Core 1 and Core 2. Those are both very good books for the exam. I liked both of them. I don't think you can go wrong. You can get both of them and not go wrong. But that's a good resource, and I have that resource available for the Network Plus, the Security Plus, and the other A Plus as well. So I think that's a pretty good place to find those from, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Professor. I enjoy your videos more than you'll ever know.
I appreciate it. And I thank you for watching them. It does help us out a lot. Thanks a lot. That's always something I don't think a lot of people realize. Somebody asked me this week, hey, do you have a Patreon? Well, I don't, and I don't plan to. That's kind of not the method we use. I don't want to have a Patreon. You just watching the videos helps support the site. If you purchase course notes or practice exams or audio replays or the downloadable video versions, those also help. So all these things work together. And so far that working together works great. I don't think I've felt a need to have a Patreon there. So what you're doing works perfectly. And watching those videos really does help a lot. So I appreciate that. Let's go back to the phone calls. 410 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Baltimore, Maryland, Jason Whiting.
Hey, Jason. Appreciate you calling. What can we do for you?
Will you be doing anything for the new Cisco CCNA certification?
The new one. Yeah, somebody in the chat room, I'm going to roll this into a question that came up in the chat room earlier where somebody was asking, hey, should I look into the CCENT? And I think our answer now would be no, because it doesn't exist anymore. Cisco got rid of the CCENT certification. So that's a quick answer to that one. What they've done is kind of combined their CCNA or the fundamentals of CCNA. Instead of having two separate exams, they've really combined it into a single exam now, which is the CCNA. So your question is pretty timely, Jason. It's one that I am interested in creating content for. Right now, I'm creating content for other things at the moment. But if you've watched in the past, I've had course notes for the CCENT before. It would make sense to update those course notes for the new CCNA. And I don't think a lot of people realized I had an app at one time for the CCENT, some Q&A. And now that I've got this practice exam format, it might make sense to do a set of practice exams for the CCNA. That would be a good one too. Right now, I'm kind of focusing on getting the practice exams done for the current certifications on my site. But after that, I would love to branch out, and I think Cisco would be a good one to do. So there's a qualified maybe in that list that I don't commit to, but I think it would be awesome.
Okay.
I appreciate the call, and keep looking for it.
Thank you.
Who knows, Jason? It might come out.
Excellent show, excellent material. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks for calling, too. That's one that there's so many things I could do. There's never a single one thing that I can do. There's always a handful. I have more things on my list that I would like to do than I will ever be able to. They tell me that's the sign of a good entrepreneur. It's either that or someone who doesn't plan very well. So I'll take whichever one that is. I'm going with it. But I have a huge list of things I would like to do. And I think all of them are winners. But I just don't have time in the day. There's a physics problem with doing things like that and having those there. I'd love to do books for CCNA. I'd love to do videos for CCNA. I know there's tons of CCNA videos anyway, but I just love to do them. I just think they're fun. It's a great set of topics. I really cut my teeth on operating systems and especially networking. I spent a huge amount of my career, 10 years of my career was really spent on protocols on the network. So it's a part of the systems that's really close to my heart. It's in my wheelhouse. I love it. I enjoy it. So it makes sense to do something like that and have all of those things there. So the real key for people that are interested in this is, and I think a logical next question is, you've got Network Plus from CompTIA, and then you've also got the CCNA now, which is really its own standalone entity from Cisco. You've got these two things. Now, which one do you do? Well, the question, I think, is backwards. I think it's what are the employers asking for? So for the jobs you want to have, what would the employers like you to have? Some employers and certain jobs fit best for Network Plus. Some employers in certain jobs fit better for CCNA. They are two very different certifications. They have a completely different set of skills that they are teaching you. They are completely different in their scope. They are completely different in their complexity. So I always see online a lot of people try to compare the two. There is no comparison. It's not, do you need an apple or do you need an orange? Okay, they're both fruit, but those are two very, very different things. So most of the time I tell people, look at what you're wanting to do next or what employers are looking from you to have. And then from there, you can then decide which certification works best for what you want to do. And it may be, some people even mentioned this, they start with the Network Plus, kind of get the fundamentals down. Then when they move to the CCNA, they don't have to worry about the fundamental part of the CCNA. They already got that. They can really concentrate on the command line and troubleshooting a Cisco network part of it with routers and switches, which is a huge part of the CCNA. So it may be that divide and conquer strategy is a good one. And I think that's the way I probably would go about doing it myself. I tend to be very methodical with my exams, with my certifications. I want to really learn everything that's in a set of exam objectives. I want to know it. I want to do hands-on. I want to know how to interpret it properly. I want to know how to troubleshoot it. So I really do spend a lot of time. Other people, though, are on a tight time scale. They don't have time to get into that level of detail. They just need to know these things and pass that exam and keep it moving. And I can appreciate that too, either way, to have those things there. So that's why I recommend to people, find the methods that work best for you, and I think you'll be pretty good. Other people in the chat room say, don't worry about certifications, just go get an IT degree. It's interesting, though, try to find an IT degree. There are not a lot of them out there. Not everybody has access. I think most of the time I see anything that is even close to being an information technology degree, it is almost always a 2-year degree from like a community college, which is a fantastic thing to have. I got my AA degree from a community college, so I'm perfectly happy with getting that community college. But you're not going to find a 4-year university, a 4-year degree in IT. Very, very rare, I would say, to find that. Not that you'll never, but it's very rare to find that. For some reason, 4-year degrees, universities have no idea what IT is about. They really have no clue what IT is about, or they consider it to be so beneath them that they just don't teach it. Now, they have computer science. In fact, some of the IT degrees that I have seen are nothing more than some business classes thrown in with every programming class they have, which is not IT. Doesn't teach you Windows, doesn't teach you networking, doesn't teach you security, doesn't teach you Linux. It's very odd that that's there. Some universities, these rare cases, and some third-party schools do offer legitimate IT degrees, but they are so rare. I went around Florida. My kids are college age. Some of them have an interest in IT. Some of them don't, which is fine too. But it was very hard to find someone that would teach cloud computing. Why? Cloud computing is obviously what everything is running on today. If you're in IT, you're in the cloud. Everything is cloud computing. Whether it's your private cloud or public cloud, it's cloud computing. It's so remarkable how little cloud computing formal education you can receive based on how incredibly popular and how much those particular skills are needed. Employers sure would like you to have some cloud computing skills. Where are you going to get it? I don't know. Through the ranks, OTJ on the job, maybe something. It's remarkable. It's very frustrating to somebody who was IT my entire career when you see a large organization saying, we will teach you IT, you will learn to code. And then I've even tried to explain to them, we don't code in IT, right? We have never programmed in IT. We aren't going to program in IT. We don't have time to program. There's no way we can learn what we need to do to be able to program. And we're not building apps. That's computer science. That's kind of a different section. That's the programming side. IT people don't do programming. We do we do scripting, we do automation. That's not programming. It's very, very important that difference is made. And they look at me like they're a dog that has heard a very high-pitched noise. Like, what do you mean? Why would you not learn to code? It's a computer. Of course you would learn to code. That's what a computer is for. They don't know. They don't get it. They don't understand. It's remarkable. And you can't explain it. You try. I've tried. You can't explain it to them because they have no idea what IT is about. So therefore, it's sort of a black box to them. They don't understand those pieces. So we'll see where those things come from. Let's go back to the phones real quick. Thank you for holding, caller. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Greg from Colorado.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. And thank you for doing a fantastic job with A+ training.
I appreciate it.
I have I'm a bit older now, and I'm following my dream here. It's been postponed by war and gosh knows what all else. But the question I would like to ask you is, what got you out of IT after all those years traveling around doing IT? I mean, what was your career path like towards the end there, and what motivated you to change to training?
Well, I argue that I really didn't leave IT since this is sort of what I'm doing. But you're right. I'm not in the trenches anymore, and I'm certainly not traveling around like I was. For those of you that have not kind of followed my path through the years, let me give you a quick summary of how I started in this and what I've done. I think that if you go back, I got my formal degree, my 4-year degree, back during the dark ages of the 80s at Florida State University, and I got a business management degree. I was interested in getting a MIS degree, a Management Information Services degree, but just as I just mentioned, kind of ties into this, that was a degree that taught you a little bit of management with a lot of programming. There's very little IT in there. There's no IT in there. So that's one of those that becomes a little bit of a challenge. So I just got a business degree. Now, at the time I was attending school and working in their computing center, computers were always interesting to me. When I was in high school, I was doing programming and trying to learn the ins and outs of how these computers worked and the simple networks that we had back then. And I knew when I got out of college that I really wanted something that was a technology or technical related job. And the first job I got was working in South Miami for a computer center, a computer store. But the person who was working at that computer store was someone who had the entire contract for every computer desktop for Miami-Dade County. At the time, it was Dade County, for all of the Dade County facilities. So if you were working for Dade County, you had to buy your computer from this person. That was the start of this. And you can imagine that's a lot of computers. Whenever I started now visiting all these different places, I would go to the police department. I would go to the fire department. I would go to solid waste management. I would go to the jail. Wherever they had computers, I was setting them up and using them and being able to work through them. That was great because you learned a lot in a very short time. These days, I guess you would take that as somebody who was working a remote position and going out and fixing computers. That was the kind of thing that I was doing. I was at one point, after a few months of that, got really tired of it and found a job working for an insurance company in Miami in their IT department, effectively a help desk position. So really my second job was help desk at that point, and it was a corporate help desk to be able to use those. And that's where I learned about Windows, learned about networking, learned about network operations, and learned a lot more about protocols. Got my hands on a protocol analyzer, my hands on a sniffer, and realized, wow, you could see the packets that were going across the network and they told a story. It really was the EKG of the network. You could see the heartbeat of the network and what was going on. You could tell whether the network was slow or the application was slow. A whole new world opened. And right then I jumped into networking. That job I stayed at for about 5 years and then went to work for the company that made that sniffer, Network General at the time, and stayed there about 10 years on and off. I left a little bit and boomeranged back. I left and became a director of voice and data networking at a third-party call center, and then boomerang back. But mostly was representing this product as a technical person. and loved going to all of these different companies, all these different organizations, state, local government, manufacturing, transportation. It's just remarkable, and saw some amazing things, and really was primarily a domestic job and traveled about. From there, obviously things changed in the industry. If you're ever in an IT company like that, there's acquisitions and purchases and divestments that occur all the time. Network General was bought by McAfee and became Network Associates. So then I learned all the McAfee products, the firewalls, intrusion prevention, antivirus. And then McAfee sold us back to being Network General again, as these things work. But the whole time, I'm really visiting and working with all of these people in IT. It was enormous fun, installations, setups, demonstrations. From there, moved into security. The security market got very, very popular, and went to work for a next generation firewall company before next generation firewalls existed. This was the company that made the very first next generation firewall, which was Palo Alto Networks, and went to work for them and stayed there 7 years, installing, designing, implementing, testing next generation firewalls in some of the biggest companies in the world. Fantastic time. Great fun. Well, after all of that is also a lot of travel. And as I've mentioned, other study groups, that is, I have 1 million miles on Delta and 1 million miles on all of the other airlines combined, just traveling throughout the world with these things. That's one of the things I think is great about this technology, is that whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, however high you want to go with it, you can do that. So it's fantastic to be able to have that functionality and the flexibility to do that. But after doing that for 30 years almost in the industry, I realized traveling every day, all the time, I'm getting older. My kids are getting older. It sure would be nice to see my family every once in a while, kind of thing. That's the trade-off, of course. And I thought, well, what kind of job could I do where I could still do this kind of thing? And I can give you the perspective of somebody who's actually installed these technologies, worked with these technologies, troubleshoot with these technologies, and really done it, but somehow not have to travel everywhere. And so that's kind of where this whole idea of Messer Studios came from, was to be able to do that, to kind of mix together the knowledge of the past and then put it together into something that I can tell people about and give them a job or a better job. That is although we don't have a formal mission statement, that's the mission statement. We want you to get a job or get a better job. And I think this is a great way to do it. So we started this about 15 years ago. I started writing books. I started doing videos back when you had to video to tape and then digitize the tape and then render it and put it on. Well, YouTube didn't exist, so we had to find somewhere to put it, those types of things. That got me into this. So I've been doing this full time for the last 4 years or so, almost 5 years, I guess it is. But really, it's gone back. The entire thing that we've been doing with these videos goes back almost 15 years at this point. And of course, the career goes back even further. So I was really doing this at the same time as these other jobs that I was working on. I would work the day job, and then I would work the night job. I often said I worked half days. I worked 8 to 8. In reality, it was more like 8 to 11 or midnight. To get some of those things done. So that's where this came from. And that's why I wouldn't say I moved out of IT. I want more people to get into IT. And I just found that this would be a good way to do it. And right about that time, YouTube happened. And right about that time, certifications became incredibly important. And about that time, so I've just kind of been following the sun, following the road and wherever it leads. And that just sort of has brought me to where I am. I can't say I planned all of it like this. It just sort of happened like this, and I'm just going with it. And so far, it's worked out pretty well.
Well, that's very encouraging. Thank you, sir.
The great part about this and things you mention is that IT and computers in general really don't care how old you are. The computer has no idea. When I make a video, it has no idea my age. It only needs to know the skills that I have. The whole problem we have when you get a little bit older in this industry, though, is it gets a little bit more difficult. There's kind of a gray hair test, a gray hair index, if you will, where someone who's hiring wants somebody who has been around the block. So if you're for instance, getting hired as a systems engineer at a next generation firewall company, they want to see that you've got some experience under your belt. They want to see that you've been in the trenches. They want you to see that you've done a little bit of troubleshooting, that you know the knowledge of the industry in general. And they're looking to see, do you have some of the age on you that can give that level of experience? But they don't want you to be too old. Once you get past a certain point, they really don't want you to get too super old with these things. And unfortunately, in really every industry, it's not just IT, ageism can be a little bit of a challenge. But I think people, when they get into their older years, you've already met a lot of people in the industry. You have some relationships that you've made with people in other organizations. If you don't, then you should make some of those, because when you now move from job to job and you're getting older in IT, you really do need to make the most of these relationships you have. We're all sort of in it together. And if you've not done a very good job at keeping up with your LinkedIn and making sure everybody knew where you were and you know where they are, and you've not done a good job at going to study the local user group meetings, and you've not done a great job at maintaining the knowledge of who's out there in the industry, there could be a little more challenge. So you have to network with your Ethernet adapter, but you also have to network with yourself and do people networking as well. That's the challenge. It's not that I don't feel old. I am someone who would be very difficult to interview with for the old jobs I used to have. They would look at me and go, "Really? You're going to fly around at your age and do that?" So it's best if I already know somebody there who knows the things I've gone through, who's seen me do these through the years, and go, "Oh, you're absolutely who we need for this job. Nobody else has done these things that you've done. Let's get you into that position." It's a completely different perspective. And some people in the chat room are going, "Really? People do this?" Absolutely. That's an issue. So it's not an issue when you're young. It's an issue when you're a little bit older. And that's why I always tell people, always keep up your list. Always have that set of relationships in your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for keeping track of your professional relationships, as long as you use it the right way. There was a great book. There was an author who came and spoke at an event I was at. I think the book was called Never Eat Lunch Alone. That's not the name of the book. It's a better title than that. Never Lunch by Yourself. I'm doing a horrible job of this. I will find it in the Amazon in just a moment. But it was effectively meant, never go out and have lunch by yourself. You should always be networking with whoever's around. Grab somebody you haven't talked to in a while and go to lunch with them. Always keep up those relationships. It can be pretty important, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. That's one of those things that I think is never insurmountable in IT. I have that book around here. I'm going to have to figure out which one. Never Eat Alone. That is the book. Keith Ferrazzi is the book. Let's see if I can pop it up on the screen there. There it is. Never Eat Alone. Looks like he's expanded and updated it even recently. And he came and spoke. You know, whenever you go to these big, you work for a big company, especially one that has a large sales team with a lot of systems engineers like we were. When I was working for McAfee, there's 1,000 people plus 1,500 people at these annual events. They'd fly us into Dallas. They'd fly us into Vegas. They fly us wherever we're going. 1,500 people in a hotel. We'd all go into one big ballroom, and they'd bring in a guest speaker. And so this was one of the guest speakers they brought in. This was back in the Network General days for the guest speaker. And he was absolutely right that you should always be, and I could do a better job with this myself, maintaining those relationships, being able to talk to people, and have those things there. So that's one of those situations when you have it here. I know I did a very good job. The reason I wasn't plugging the book is because I couldn't remember it. Never Eat Alone, which obviously is a much better title than whatever it is, that nonsense I was saying earlier. Somebody worked a lot to be able to work that properly. A question in the chat room before we go back to the phones is there a time limit for taking the Core 2 after passing the Core 1? Or if you take them in the reverse order, is there a time limit for taking the Core 1 after passing the Core 2? Because you could take them in either order. There is no time limit. For some reason on the internet, I'll often see people go, "Oh yeah, it's a year. You know, you got to take it within a year." That's not true either. There is no limit. You only have to take them when they are the same version. So you have to get them both passed before the exam series is retired. That's the important part. And that's why whenever I bring up my slides at the beginning of the study group, one of the things that I put on there is that date, so you can have a reference to this. So I always show this slide at the beginning that says, here it is. My head's not in there, but that's okay. The 221,001, 221,002 were released on January 15th of 2019. These exam versions stick around about 3.5 years. So 19, 20, 21, 22. So the second half, about July of 2022, is when we think that this would go away. So that is why I mentioned that you have to pass both of them before the midpoint of 2022, July of 2022. If we think that's a roundabout date, but that's what we mean, and being able to have that there. That's where we come from with those things. Let's listen in. I can't really reach back here. I can't turn on the fireplace because the fireplace, it's 85 degrees outside. The fireplace, I turned off the fireplace. It doesn't have the piece there that would, the gas is not turned on. I do not have the pilot light on for that right now. To have those pieces there. I'll walk back there and we'll move some things around in a moment. Let's go back to the phone lines. If I can pull up that screen, we'd be able to see it, to the 914 area code. Hi, caller. Thanks for holding for so long. What is your question? Caller. Oh, I didn't click the button. There it is. Hey, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name's Andrew. I'm calling from New York.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to say thanks for your high-quality production that you put on as a professor for the internet, because I think with a lot of students being at home watching their professors and having online courses, production quality is nothing compared to you, and they could take a lot of notes from you. But one thing I was going to ask you about is the last caller, you kind of got into the networking and like jobs. And yesterday, my brother's friend reached out to me. He knows that I'm going to school right now for cybersecurity, and he asked me if I know about IT networking. And I said I did. And even though I haven't taken the networking courses at my school yet, I've been following your videos to learn about for the certifications, because studying for the certifications is one of the best ways to learn, I think. And when I do take those courses at the school, I'll be very prepared to pass. But he asked me if I had any IT networking experience, and he understood I'm learning still. And the reason he reached out is because he said he currently doesn't, the IT person working for his small construction firm, he has an office, they don't really care much. They don't like the person for whatever reason. And he's my brother's friend, and he reached out to me, and it's an opportunity. And I'm just kind of wondering, it's my first opportunity to kind of get my foot in the door and get some experience almost as a consultant, not working for a company, because my brother's friend did mention it's a good gig. You can freelance, having the skills of knowing IT networking. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering kind of like what would be like a protocol to kind of get this opportunity, even though I don't have the experience, like a kind of a fake it till you make it, or just getting the passwords from the current IT guy, or should my brother's friend have those details? Like, I figured you'd be the perfect person to ask, at least to get like some sort of crash course in that.
Boy, in our industry, part of the challenge, and I think some of the fear that a lot of people have about IT, is that we're all kind of faking it till we make it. Nobody knows everything about everything they need to know about. So if you walk into any corporate data center, there is a mix of servers and databases and applications and network connections, and they are massive and varied, and no one person knows everything about all of that. And even networking is a very good example of this. I feel like the last job I had working for someone else was working at a very high level for the type of job I had. It was a systems engineering position. I was explaining to people this brand new technology that was on the market that is an incredibly complex technology, and showing them how this works. And when they hired me, they were hiring people that really had to know this content because there were so few people working in that company at the time. We were effectively a startup. I would think I was the 95th employee at Palo Alto Networks that was hired. So we were just getting the product out to the market, but there were things about the networking aspects of this that I was not familiar with because I had not had the experience in that area. For instance, BGP is not, I know enough to work around BGP and work with it, but when you get into the details of it, I've never had to manage a BGP connected network to any extent. Really, you set it up, one link, and you're done. But I had a lot of people I worked with who worked at internet service providers who had to manage multiple BGP implementations simultaneously, which is a completely different animal. And so if I had a question about scalability or rolling this out or implementing it into one of those environments, I just called that person. I knew I didn't know enough about BGP to do that. I was quote unquote faking it till I made it. But the reality is if a customer asked the question, I would say, you know what? I have no idea because I've never worked with that. But everybody in the industry knows that situation. They know nobody's going to know everything. But I would always say, but I know exactly who to call. And he's going to get on the phone with us and tell us exactly the way we need to have this thing going. So it was more like knowing who to call in that scenario. Now, when you're starting out, you're more of a sponge. You're trying to just grab the fundamentals of all of these things. And if you're somebody who wants to get into IT networking, Network Plus gives you the basics. But if you really want a solid knowledge of how all of these switches are working, how all these routers are working, how they connect to each other, how the IP addressing allows these things to work properly, how routing tables are really fit into this mix, and how to troubleshoot all these things, you really do need the CCNA certification. If you were wanting to go to that level of knowledge with managing those types of networks, the CCNA is remarkable in the amount of information it provides you and the skills that it gives you because it expects you to be able to do a lot of hands-on and building these routers and switches from the ground up and being able to troubleshoot them. That's where I usually recommend people to go, especially, and you mentioned going into IT security or cybersecurity or whatever the kids are calling it these days. But IT security is a huge foundation of that is networking. You can't possibly design, implement, and troubleshoot a next generation firewall, an intrusion prevention system, and IPsec VPN connection unless you already understand what's happening on the network. So CCNA gives you a huge step towards that foundation, and it makes you a lot more familiar with what you run into. And although it's a Cisco certification, the way switches work on a Cisco is exactly the same way switches work on any other product out there. Routing on a Cisco works the same on routing on other devices. Yes, the command line might be different, the configuration might be different, but the terminology is the same. The routing tables work the same. The dynamic protocols work the same. It's all works the same under the surface. The protocols don't change. Only what you type in at the command line does. So that's why I recommend to people, if you really want to get into security, get that strong foundation in networking. That will propel you up into that security role when you're ready.
Definitely. And you mentioned, I feel like it's like you got to be a quick learner, but you mentioned to have someone on call, like who can troubleshoot, right? So I was wondering, could I have you on call? For troubleshooting? The
worst possible person you want to have on call for me right now, because I'm always in here typing away at something, and getting my head out of my books is always the biggest challenge. I think my days of on-call troubleshooting are probably over.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm just wondering, would it be like I go there, check the how the setup is before I can commit to taking over that role, or I should just fake it till I make it, say, yeah, when you need me. And just the last question about freelance pay, I guess. Is there a general guide out there for what it should be for someone level entry freelancing?
There are some site. I wish I could remember the site off the top of my head that talks a lot about freelancing. I had brought it up in a different study group. Let's answer the first question first, which was if somebody says, hey, can you take care of our network? The answer is yes. We'll figure out what it is once we get there. Everybody has the same type of routers and switches and firewalls. Everybody has the same basic set of services running on their network. So going in and doing an inventory or a site survey or documenting the network is just going to be part of the job you walk into. It's very common when you work in networking, especially if you're the entry-level network guy, you're the newbie in the network team. The first thing they give you is a blank piece of paper, and they say, go in the data center, document where all the wires are going. They probably don't have a good set of documents anyway. They very often, one of your first jobs is to go do some documentation. So you become very familiar not only with how do you use Visio or whatever Visio type system they have running in their environment, but now you also are becoming familiar with there's where that switch is, there's where it plugs into. You may not even know exactly what's going over that link, but you know where the cables are going. And you're documenting out where all of these things are. And eventually you're overlaying that with the application services, with your wide area network links. And you become a lot more familiar with the what you have in the room, so that you can then, when people start asking you questions and you start needing to plan for the future, you know at least the baseline of where you're starting with.
Great. And is the word for like a document like that a topology, or is there a better word for that in the IT world?
That's it. Topology. In fact, that's one of the things that people commonly ask when you have vendors come in. They'll ask, hey, do you have a topology picture we could look at? I'd like to see a picture of your topology. Do you have a topology map? That's very common for people to ask for. And the answer you should be telling them, by the way, is no. You may not look at our topology. That's a significant security concern. But let's give you an overview, a very wide, and you'll do some whiteboarding. Here's the routers. Here's what they're connected to. Here's some switches. Here's where this goes. How would we put this solution in based on that particular design? And that's just the whiteboarding is a lot of fun. And you get some conversations going back and forth. That's usually how it works. As far as doing freelancing, which is its own set of challenges, which there's a lot of contractual requirements. It's not a simple thing to do something like that. I'm going to find the website. There's a couple of websites out there that focus on IT freelancers or people that are doing this kind of for an all-in-one purpose. There are a number of people that handle the IT for these small and medium businesses, and they have their own company to do that. They handle the backups. They handle the application installations. They handle getting hardware. They handle laptops. They handle upgrading Windows. They handle the patches. They handle everything. But they do it for a lot of different companies. I'll have to find that, and I'll try to put that into the video description page once I figure out where that is. But if you want a really good example of that, a good podcast for that is Mike's. Which one is it? I'm gonna have to pull up my podcast list. So I think he names it with his name. My podcast. Go find the latest ones from the Mike Tech Show, and he will tell you everything you need to know. In fact, that may be a good question to ask of him, where you would go. I know on the Mike Tech Show website of MikeNation.net, he has a lot of great links there, including one to a forum of people that all talk about what you do to handle your business. You know, how do you handle the freelancing part? Knowing the technology is one thing. Running a business is a completely different thing. There's contractual requirements. There's liability you have to worry about. There is managing negotiations. All of those things are well outside the scope of IT, but they're incredibly important if you're going to run your own business. And I think his show is probably one that has given me the most amount of information along those lines. If I wanted to do something like that, that's who I listen to.
Thank you so much, Professor. You just I thought I was listening to the last caller, and I just called on a whim because I was thinking, who else could I ask? And thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You were great.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
That's one. Mike's website, he has a number of different links. Maybe it's in his wiki. I know on his website, MikeNation.net, which I'm looking at right now, I don't see a link immediately to that that forum site. But it's a forum site. It's people that do this kind of thing. It's got to be out there somewhere for this. I'll have to find that and be able to break it down. Let me look at his different categories of things that he has. No, I don't see it offhand, but I will find it and we'll figure out which one of those it is. Running a business is tough. Running a business is not the same as knowing the technology. It's a completely different animal entirely. I think the best thing, if anybody's in this position, they're trying to figure out, how do I run a business like this? The answer is you outsource as much as possible, except the thing that you want to do. So I want to make content. I want to make videos. I want to write books. I want to publish those. Everything else should be handled by someone else. But I have a website to manage. There's an accounting aspect to this and a taxing aspect to this that has to be considered. There is and all of these things are outsourced. I have an accounting person, financial person who's very familiar with my company, who can handle that piece of it. And I have to pay them to do that. That's the painful part of this, is you have to detach yourself. That's an investment I'm making where they can do that for me and I can focus on writing more content for you. The part about running a website, the website itself is something, I'm not running my own servers. I'm not managing my own infrastructure. I have a third party handle that and make those pieces available. And there's multiple steps, multiple organizations involved in making that happen. So some of those become pretty important. Being able to know when to outsource, how to outsource. I mentioned earlier, if you purchase one of my books, those books are made on demand. I have I've partnered with a printing company that makes these books on demand, and all of your information on where to ship it is sent to them. And I say, ship a book to this person, and they put a label on it and they send it out the door, and they do it incredibly efficiently. And I don't have to worry about that. So I used to do all my own shipping and receiving. That would take half my day. So it gets, at some point, it's obvious. When it starts taking half your day, maybe somebody else should be doing this for you. And you just have to figure out how that fits in with your business model. And is it profitable to do it that way? So running a business can be just a crazy thing. We could do an entirely different podcast on how technical people can run a business. I think Mike Tech Show, he talks technology. He talks about troubleshooting. He talks about in the trenches. He talks about fixing things, but he also talks about the business side of things too, which is why I listen to him. My podcast list is not so great, to be fair. The folks in the chat room are going, what other podcasts are on there? My podcast list, not so fantastic. If I had to parse this out, I mean, it's just horrible. There's like Mike Tech Show, there's Mike Rowe, there's MKB. So those are the three good ones on there. Those are my mainstays. And just keep going with that. Just keep doing that every time. And you'll be fine. You'll listen to those three, and they'll get you somewhere else from there. And going to the other pieces of this. So the chat room, some folks talking about the book, since I was talking about those books being printed. If you buy the printed book and it goes to Utah and they print it up on the printer and they slap a label on it, usually goes out the next business day or the day after. Immediately once you buy it, though, you get access to the digital download. So you'll get an email, check your spam folder. So you'll immediately get an email that says, we're going to ship this to you. Here's the address I have on file. Is this correct? If not, let me know. And here's your link to download the book immediately so you can get the digital version. And then you just wait. You'll get a notification when the book ships. And then you get a notification when the book is out for delivery. You get a notification when it's delivered. So all those things are there too. I use a third party. I have outsourced with another company to provide you with an email notification of those things. See how this works? It's all outsourced. So I try not to touch anything. I try to automate as much of this as possible so that when you buy the book, it's automatically sent to the book creator. It's automatically shipped out. That shipping is automatically added to my personal set of databases, which then automatically sends you the emails that things have happened. I never touch it. So as people in the chat room said, maybe it's not a virtual set. Maybe I'm virtual. Maybe I'm not the real thing to have that there. So I try to be as automated as possible because then I can sit in this room all day and I can just write. This is where I usually am when I'm not live streaming. I can just sit here, type away, write the books, write the questions, get the study groups ready for next week, get the pop quiz questions ready. Send all my pop quizzes over to Lori. Lori posts them on the website. She schedules them. She gets into Instagram ready to go. All I do is write the questions. She handles the back end of that. And so that's the perfect way to do it. Figure all this. Maybe it is all CGI. Maybe I'm CGI. The whole thing's CGI. That's a real background back here. See, there's no green screen. Wish I could throw something at it. Let me throw this piece of paper. So here we go. Here we go. Here we go. You didn't even go on the camera, but that's a real background. Almost went off frame to have those things there. Really, really, really real. It was difficult, really, to figure out what to put back there. So this is my other mic. This is the mic I used to have in the podcast I used to do with my better half. My cigars are up there. Haven't touched one of those in a while. I don't know why I still have them. But it's all there. And there sits the piece of paper, which maybe that's fake. Not sure. Who comes up with the joke answers to the pop quizzes? How dare you, sir? Those are serious answers that I put. I write all of my content. That is the only thing I do not outsource, is I do not outsource my content. I never have someone else write a question. I never have someone else write a presentation. I never have someone else write what you see. So everything that you see in a video, every demonstration, all of the pop quizzes, and all of the joke answers are all written by me. That one is kind of a watchword of what we do. I don't think outsourcing that makes sense for us. I don't want to have content that is just good enough. I want the content to be as good as possible. So having written thousands and thousands of questions at this point, I kind of got the feel for it now. I'd better have the feel for it by now anyway. That's important. So that's why those pop quizzes, I write those. Some are good, some are awful, some don't hit at all. They can't all be winners, people. But that's where all of those weird answers come from. And it's really just something that happens as I'm writing it. Something that goes into my head, something that is different about the question that I'm asking. Sometimes it's related to something in the news. Sometimes it's a movie that I watch. Sometimes it just happens to be what we're doing there. I never know what it's going to be. What are all of my qualifications? Who in the world at this point knows? Well, that's sort of where we started with this. You just heard the whole story sort of the career and how we got to this point. We're just making videos because you're watching them. You know, if you stop watching them, I would have to do something else. So there you go. That's kind of how this works at this point. There's very few people doing training videos who have done this as their career. There are very few people making Cisco videos who have actually done Cisco troubleshooting. It's probably a better example, Cisco. There's more people doing Cisco videos who've actually done Cisco. But A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, it's hard to find a security professional, a network professional, or somebody who's worked in doing computer management and operating systems who have actually done these things. So I feel like that's the qualification. I feel like if I can give you a perspective of someone who's been there late at night trying to get these things working and how they are working, then maybe that's the way it goes. Maybe that's the right qualification. It is in my mind. I think that's the differentiation anyway. And that's why I keep doing this and having those things there. Very last, before we finish up, there were some questions about what CompTIA is doing with remote testing. There have been some rumors out there where people said remote testing is coming on the 15th. The remote testing is coming on the 16th. I don't believe CompTIA has said at this point when the date actually is. I know that the first set, well, no, they've now changed their website. They really have said April 15th. They changed it today and said, see, this is timely. That's not the page. This is the page. So they've now said, yep, we'll be ready on the 15th. So there you go. So they say online testing will be available starting on April 15th, where blah, 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 you can test everywhere, test anytime, highly secure, et cetera, et cetera. Revisit the page starting April 15th to access exam registration. And I think that will be one of their biggest challenges is scalability. We will see how that turns out. Test proctors communicate only in English, and OnView testing software is English-based. Full suite of translated exams are available in the countries that participate in online testing, not available in China, Cuba, Iran, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, Slovenia, Sudan, and Syria. Other exclusions include CTT Plus and Server Plus Online will be available. Any site licenses, server online testing will be available May 1st. So there you go. That's their latest time frame. Let's hope, we're crossing our fingers, that they will be able to scale this. So I think that's going to be the biggest problem, is someone has to watch you take the exam. So don't think you're going to be able to jump in on the first week. And if you're at all possible able to wait and take your exam at a proper testing center, I think it will be a better testing experience for you, because I think that's the most important part. If you're tight of time, we already talked to people in the chat room. I need this now for a job. I live too far away from a testing center. This is a great solution for you. Online testing is a fantastic solution for you. But that's one where this may not be a great solution if you can wait. It may be much easier, much less of a hassle, and you actually might have much better chance of catching some availability if you can do this in a proper testing center. So that's my recommendation to you. Use that online testing if you must. If at all possible, wait until you can go to a proper testing center. Either way, you're a winner, right? Flip a coin, you're a winner either way. I feel lucky. This is where you have to make that decision. I can't make that decision for you. You'll be able to figure out whether it's best or not. Remember, you're investing a lot of money in this testing process. And having the right room and the right software and making sure the network stays up and running and making sure someone doesn't walk into the room. I hear these horror stories on the internet of people who are doing online testing, not with CompTIA, but other places. And if someone accidentally walks into the room and goes, oh, sorry, and they close the door, the person cancels the whole thing and says, nope, you just failed. Someone came in the room. That's it. That seems a little harsh, but that apparently is a reality. So those are the types of things to keep in mind. This is you needing to be in the best possible place, the best possible mindset to be able to take a certification exam. We want you to score as high as possible. You having to deal with a lot of the environment may not be the best possible environment. So pick what fits best for you and go with that. Some people are fine with that. Some people already got the setup. You've done it a million times. Just give me the test. Great. Go take that test in your house. Other people, maybe online testing. It's not a panacea. It's not the perfect situation, but it can solve some problems for you. It's great to hear that it's coming along. That's an aggressive time frame they've got, the 15th. I look forward to seeing what happens with that. Well, I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for joining us in our after show. Thanks for being here in the first hour for the Q&A that I give to you. Thanks for coming in the second hour and asking questions of me. Don't forget that we've got our calendar online at professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll know that we have a Network Plus study group next week on the 8th, Wednesday, and we have another Security Plus study group a week later on the 15th. Come back. We'll have more questions for you. You can call us. We can have this, just do it all over again. It's always great fun to do these, and we're so glad that you are here to do this with us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining us on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone.